Hello, everybody. A warm welcome back to the day 2 proceedings of API Days Dubai and Middle East. You are in stage 1. We are focusing on the digital transformation across sectors as part of this segment. Joining us first will be Hadis Nasari, founder and CEO at Hami Digital Consultancy, and Mohammad Reza Mahmoodi, chairman and co-founder at Hami Digital Consultancy. Their session will focus on digital leadership and digital ecosystem.
Hi, present. Greeting to all present the lecture, and I hope our space today will be useful for you. At the beginning of the talk, Mohammad Reza will talk about the digital ecosystem and the impact of APIs on their growth process. And they will talk about the impact of technologies such as APIs on the process of facilitating digital leadership in organizations. We would be happy if you have any question about the detail of these two issues, send them to us on LinkedIn or by email. Well, Mohammad Reza, we are ready to hear what you have to say.
Thank you, Hadis. Hello, everyone, and thank you for hosting, participating, and sharing the insights through API Days. We hope you have enjoyed so far from this event, and we wanted to celebrate 10th anniversary of API Days. We hope one day there would be a 100th birthday for it to celebrate. The first program transfers of information began in 1960s when simple transition between protocols were feasible. Then from 80s, with the equipping of intermediaries with logic, meaningful and remote transfer of information became possible. The 90s were the decade of emergence of new platforms that allowed us to enhance the complexity and reliability of our messages. Coinciding with the start of the third millennium AD, APIs were born in their present meeting, and their management provided organizations with revenue-generating opportunities. From 2015 onwards, with the expansion of cloud services and computing, along with the provision of integration as a service, new standards were set in the industry. The pervasiveness of these concepts and the emergence of API economy caused the need for a new concept among business and technology activities, known today as the digital ecosystems. Mutual value creation fuels platforms, marketplaces, and ecosystems. The API ecosystem is primarily made up of the following elements. Business ecosystems are made up of partners, individuals, startups, and customers that access business services from digital platforms that organizations provide. As you may see on the slides, there are many components in an API-enabled digital ecosystem. The business ecosystem partner creates a new platform from these services and decides to provide or sell it through an organization's digital marketplace, which can provide access to customers. And the organization finally can provide its solutions through other partners' digital marketplace or platforms. But one thing that you have to know about the digital ecosystem and one major thing is to identify the right partners. Innovation in digital have led to new business models to improve efficiencies and profits by delivering a unique value proposition at an improved margin. Through identifying the right partners and opening new pathways to innovation and growth. With APIs coming into the picture, the traditional way of forming alliances is giving way to new age digital alliances where engagement terms are clear, automated, and scalable. As you see, by the 2019, there are more than 20,000 APIs around the world with the annual growth rate of 34%. And as you may see, you can see that the API share of revenue of leading e-commerce portals are more than 60%. Leading online travel aggregators are more than 19%, and leading cloud-based software companies are more than 50%. In the past few years, the API space has seen explosive growth and is rapidly evolving the potential to unlock new opportunities. Based on the API prioritization framework provided by Deloitte, product development prioritization in this area is based on two main indicators: attractiveness and feasibility. Attractiveness refers to those factors that either provide higher return, for example, services or products which are in high demand in the market, or can be expected to have a good growth rate. Also, we would hope the revenue model of these options will be more stable. Somehow they differentiate us from our competitors. The distinctions can also be examined in two ways. First, there is an ability to run. That is, in terms of technology, it can be developed or relationships and partnerships can support its development. Second, it makes a strategic sense. The capacities of services have been seen in business, and there is also the necessary readiness to develop and enter this market. As APIs are being used every day, API management is a vital component that helps businesses cope with dynamic changes within and outside the organizations and deliver what various consumers and partners need. There is an operating model required to manage ecosystems. Technologies are shifting value from manufacturers and distributors to companies that operate end-to-end platforms and provide outcomes as a service. For many enterprises, that means constant change and disruption, and an increasing threat of market obsolescence. Operating models are ever evolving, driven by feedback from employees, customers, stakeholders, and effectiveness of business processes, and also the competitive landscape. An operating model has 9 interdependent components. These components are strongly influenced by and will in turn influence each other: the enterprise culture, as we know as digital culture, the governance, somehow we call it digital governance or data governance, financials on the front line, decisions, performance management, talent acquisition and management, sourcing and alliances, as we know as partnerships, organizational structure, places, tools, and also the future of work. As the final step, we should mention a 5-step approach to a sustainable ecosystem growth. The first is we should adopt an agile approach. Go to the market and iterate often. As you explore possible API strategies and use cases, consider using lightweight prototypes and rapid experimentation. Second one is enhancing your talent model. Just as aircraft manufacturers hire aeronautical engineers to design products, companies must pursue API strategies to hire the right people or reskill existing people for the job. The third one, get to know the data you already have. Many organizations have troves of raw data they have never used or never think of using it either. By working with data scientists to analyze these assets before embarking on API initiative, companies can better understand their data and the value behind those data. The fourth one is the create consumer experience, cost synergies, help clear synergies for consumers by lowering cost or creating novel products, sales funnels, service synergies, and any other offerings that you have. And the last one, competitive advantage. Not competing with the price, but through value will help you compete in the long run. And the more sustainable the competitive advantage, the more difficult competitors find it to neutralize the advantages. My colleague Hadis will continue the speech on digital leadership. Thank you for listening to my speech.
Thank you for your presentation. Okay, when we talk about digital leadership, in addition to what we need to consider as human resource leaders, it's the use of new technology to develop the leadership. To success in digital, line of business executive must understand and invest in their application architecture, even if these areas are outside their comfort zone. We could probably write a book about this topic or a less lengthy article. Let's start with a definition of what a modern application architecture and the role of digital leadership. The four roles of digital leadership is about DX strategy plan, DX project management, and DX team management, and after that, DX project implementation. For the next page, to succeed in digital, line of business executive must understand and know about the essence of digital leadership. The digital leadership is about character, competence, integrity, capability, and results. And after that, we could probably know about the essence, and after that, know about the effective of essence. Technology has become a business asset, just like people and facilities and partnership are. Business leaders wrestling to become digital businesses have resolved this, of course. So the question is their organization ready to move quickly to solve the new problems and meet the escalating demands of customers? To answer that question, business leaders must be smart about the technology, such as APIs, that underpins their business success, including modern application architecture. Business leaders need to know enough about these technologies to be able to sanitize check the claims of a supplier or partner that promise results, as well as explore below. This often requires of business leaders to have the trust and confidence of the technology leaders they can turn to. But suffice it's to say that business leaders can no longer leave technology to IT. They must get involved to know when things feel like they are on solid ground and that the roadmap will support the future of the business. It's all about how to start by saying that few business executives get excited about having to spend more money, but in this case, they very quickly realize that they can't achieve the business goals without considering change to the process and system about APIs and people that have to fulfill the experience. Mobile apps were the first time I saw business executives get excited about things like customer database and APIs. The reasons were quite simple. The app didn't do anything valuable without those changes. Once the business leader was involved in the project scoping and requirements road mapping, they quickly learned how to establish the business priorities and ask for feedback on what operational and system change were needed to deliver it, and for example to complete a mortgage application or open an account. They learned that they had to expose the back-end transaction system in ways that simplify the process for customers. The payoff those back-end investment was a lower cost of onboarding, a higher rate of onboarding success, and a faster time to revenue, win, win, and win. Building out a modern application architecture is the domain of technologies, but business leaders need to be involved in both decision making and investment here. This level of investment is likely to be new and unfamiliar to the most digital native startups. The level of involvement is likely to be new and unfamiliar to the most digital native startups. So, how deep should line of business executive go, and how should they align with IT to make things happen? There's an important balance here for a business leader to be smart about business while being savvy about the things that go into making a business successful, including technology. For generation, technology was only the responsibility of CIOs and the IT organization. Now technology is the responsibility of CEO at the last of the expense of knowing who the key suppliers and how much to invest. Fortunately, a new generation of technology savvy leaders is rising to the top of leaders' rank, sometimes taking over the CEO's role already. For most business leaders, the most path forward is to find technology partner that they trust to give them the right scope. We see the savviest companies use two inbox leadership for important technology led business initiatives. By paving a business leader the roadmap and the business leader with an equipment technology leader, they operate as a micro team to guide the effort and fund the investment. So the business leader need to relationship as much as they need the lingo. Both relationship and some technical accuracy are best, of course. Business leaders are focused on the top of line and bottom line, which means that projecting the business impact of technology is vital. When it comes to return on the modern application architecture, what guidance can you give business leader to help them secure the budget to make the needed investment? This is perhaps the theory's question we got, and we got in every day. How do you calculate the return on a technology? How to calculate the return on the technology investment rate when investment down into a measure contributed to the business, direct revenue generated, cost structure, and business agility. Oftentimes, direct revenue is hard to attribute. The considerate cost saving comparing the before and after cost is sometimes extremely large, and sometimes the improvement in employee productivity is also large. But don't overlook the direct financial benefit, highly agility, the ability to introduce new services and services improvement faster. This is not soft benefits because it accelerates the pace of getting revenue from new services. There's another financial benefit that sometimes get overlooked. The money that comes from extending the life of capital investment by making an existing system available to solve new problems. APIs has a modern architecture is often deployed to allow firms to move forward to build the new capabilities by harnessing the latent power of their existing transaction system. This can be powerful contributor to revenue without incurring major cost in the form of big capital investment. Thank you for listening to me, and I hope you can use APIs for growth and development at all stages of your business leadership.
Thanks a lot, Hadis. Thanks a lot, Mohammad Aiza. Just one question. So, in terms of you spoke in detail about the digital leadership. So, in terms of this organization taking a path towards digital transformation, how much do you see the a need for making the leadership aware of that these things? I mean, digital leadership qualities. It's not the leadership of the organization is predominantly you look from a management perspective and not always from a, and we overlook these aspects. Right? So how often do you see the need to happen, provide a training or making the leadership aware of the digital aspects of it also?
Okay, Mohammed Reza, do you want to?
Okay. I will share my opinion on this question. As you know, Parasant, we have a topic today on this regard about digital transformation journeys in the organizations. We call it leadership gap. Um, Somehow in many organizations that we have been working, leaders thinks that their organizations and everything through their organizations are really good, everything is fine, but if you go to the front line of that organization and talk to the employers and talk to the middle managers, I mean, anything on the front line of the organization, they think and start to think that everything is not fine, and the leadership thinks that it's fine. They are having somehow a false confidence about their
Right.
organization, and they think that maybe digital transformation and these kind of things are somehow a fashion things.
Mm-hmm.
But we think that it would be really necessary to have both approach, bottom line and top line too.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Great. So thanks a lot for joining us here at API Days Dubai and sharing your views and inputs. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Wishing you all the
Thank you
best.
too. Thank you.
Moving on in this segment on digital transformation across sectors. Joining us now will be Mohammad Al Alami, Corporate Business Development Lead at Tap Payments. He's going to enlighten us about um, how to scale your business through payments, the fragmented MENA payment landscape, and other factors to consider. Right. Welcome, Mohammed.
Thank you so much, Prasanath. How's everyone doing today?
Yeah.
Um, hope I hope you're all enjoying the API Days events. It's been very interesting to listen into the other speakers to date. Very enlightening. So just to kick things off, as introduced, I'm going to be talking about how to scale your business today, focusing on the fragmented payment uh, landscape in the MENA region, and some other factors that you should consider, not just for your customers, but also for your business partners, and for to ensure that your business succeeds in the most crucial way. You know, because as we all understand, when we talk about payments, there's there you would accept losing out a customer because of a lack of product offering that would give you something to work on, marketing that would give you something to work on, or any other business process. But to lose out a customer in the last stage when they've already decided to choose you and win you over, and miss out on that last stage is not acceptable for any business, and it could determine the survival of that business, especially if you're talking about startups and SMEs in the MENA market. So, so just to start things off, any business, whenever they want to launch, they start small, and starting small means they start locally. And once they can grow and they create a nice, healthy environment in a local market, they decide to scale regionally, then globally. Focused, obviously, if you're in the GCC market, you start in one of these countries and then you scale into the other countries in the GCC, and then you want to scale even further to the rest of the MENA region. And obviously markets like Jordan, Lebanon, Egypt are the most, let's say, interactive, most opportunistic markets in today's market, especially in the MENA region. So talking about the MENA customer, First, there are two types of behaviors that we need to identify. First is prior to the pandemic, where cash was ruling all. In the MENA region, everybody preferred to pay cash. I myself, I don't think, since back in the pre-COVID days, it was difficult for anyone to pay online due to the lack of trust, and the dominance of the in-store purchases, right? And shopping online prior to the pandemic was just didn't have much trust. You don't know if you would ever receive your funds back if you paid online. You don't know if the product that you ordered would be up to scratch, and in the same time, you're worried if it gets delivered or not. And this is problems not just the average consumer but face, but I'm sure many people listening into this call, and me personally, we've faced this all prior to the pandemic. And obviously, the number one headache when it comes to ordering online is the refunds, right? Let's say you managed to return your order, it wasn't up to scratch, and issuing refunds, not just from a customer's point of view, but from a business point of view, could also be a nightmare. And then what happened? COVID hit. All businesses were forced to go online. The race started. If you were not online, you did not survive. It's that simple. Especially when you talk about the startups and SMEs who didn't have, let's say, the cash flow or support needed to last long during the COVID lockdowns, and actually sell and reach their customers. So first thing everybody started doing was going online, and with that, the surge of businesses to enable those other businesses to go online, to basically become an e-commerce business, grew a lot. For example, there started a lot of platforms grew and started up, especially in this part of the world. Shopify, WooCommerce, very old platforms, but now because of COVID, you could see the surge in the users. In post-COVID, even the launch of new companies such as Zid and Zida, Zoho as well, which was doing incredible just to support all of the businesses in the region to make sure that everybody had everything they needed, not just for e-commerce, but also any online business process, instead of going from the old manual way, being in the office, using certain manual processes, and actually getting more online support with online products, whether it's a website builder, CRMs, inventory management, accounting software solution, just a whole support solution for e-commerce businesses. And then obviously the last mile delivery to ensure that all products get delivered not just on time, but at the highest, fastest way possible, and to ensure that no products get lost or stolen in the meantime. And after that, obviously, online payments became more secure. There was a lot of focus on improving not just the payment experience, but also improving payment infrastructure, regulations, and security, especially when it comes from the government support. The whole vision that came from two examples, the UAE and Saudi, which was also replicated in other countries in the GCC and the MENA region, which is we want to have a cashless economy, right? And in order to have a cashless economy, they had the government support behind it, and businesses, consumers, envision of this government vision for 2030 or Expo 2020. I think that it we're talking about 2030, which is still 8 years down the line, and we're still very close to achieving that mark, especially in Saudi Arabia. But not only that, when you talk about regulations, basically the rules and in an ecosystem for all businesses to operate in a healthy way, very secure way, and also to up to a certain standard or quality, to ensure that all payment companies are able to do 1, 2, 3, 4, all last mile delivery platform, all the ecosystem for e-commerce businesses had all the support needed to operate in the highest level. And mainly it's not just for the businesses, but mainly for the average consumer living in these countries. So because of that, consumer security and protection was at an all-time high. If you did not receive an order, today it's much easier to get your rights, your funds back refunded, or if the product was never delivered, or even issuing a chargeback with your bank to make sure that your funds hit your account has never been more proven. And also the fraud management and anti-money laundering support that came in with this has been very high post-COVID. So now I'm just going to be talking about just MENA commerce in general as well. So if you want to look at the ecosystem in the MENA region, internet penetration has never been higher. We're even higher than the global average to date. And if you want to look at also purchasing power in the GCC, so when I say purchasing power, it's basically the decision that an average consumer living in the GCC takes to actually make a payment, to make a decision to buy something, whether it's online or physically in any store through because of a campaign that was launched, or from once they're made aware of a product that's available, and taking the decision is in an all-time high. The GCC not just rivals, but in my opinion even beats some other countries like the US and the UK when it comes to the purchasing power decision making. Also, if you want to look at after the COVID boom, COVID came in 2020. Even after that huge boom that happened, you can even see an additional growth in 2021 of 35% in the MENA region within the e-commerce, landscape. And it's not a secret anymore. Where cash was king, now cash is phasing out. And in fact, only 10% of the people in the MENA region still prefer to pay with cash. The rest go for digital payments, with around 58% right now preferring to pay online using a card or alternative payment methods such as Apple Pay and buy now pay later. And I'll go through that a bit more in detail in a bit. Also, the rise of buy now pay later has been massive. If you want to talk about 2022, we expect it to increase from by another almost 100% just in 2022. Even again after the boom, after everything happened, the introduction of buy now pay later in this part of the world, it's been massive for merchants operating online today. So now I'm going to be talking a bit more about the fragmented MENA landscape, just to give you a bit of an idea of what are the payment methods that exist in today's market. How can you as a business succeed and ensure that you have all the payment options that your customers love? Because like I mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, you don't want to miss out on a customer because of a lack of payment acceptance, right? So if we talk about the GCC, Jordan, Egypt, Lebanon as the main markets in the MENA region, and we talk about networks, so Visa, MasterCard, American Express, I'm sure everyone on this call has heard of them because they're everywhere. They're international networks, and if you support them, then at least it gives you an idea that I can operate on an international level and support these methods. But the differences in the GCC, where there's around like under 60 million population in 6 countries, the market's very, very fragmented. I'm sure a lot of people on this call, if they've never been to Saudi Arabia, if you've never operated locally in Saudi Arabia, you might have never heard of Meda. But Meda is the local debit network in Saudi Arabia, which means that if anyone who has a debit account would be issued a card from their bank, which is called a debit card. And usually the cards, especially in the UAE and international markets, would be branded by Visa, MasterCard, American Express. However, in Saudi Arabia, there's a local network called Meda. In Kuwait, there's a network called Knet. In Bahrain, there's a network called Benefit. And then in the other countries as well, you have NAPS in Qatar, Oman Net in Oman, Misa, which is a local network recently launched in Egypt. And it goes to show that there's a lot of different local alternatives that you need to focus on. And then if you want to take it another step further, there are alternative payment methods. I'm sure everyone's heard of Apple Pay, Google Pay, Samsung Pay, all of them. But then there are the local ones such as SEC Pay and Benefit Pay. And also the new rise of Careem operating as a fintech today and ensuring that all their customers can use Careem Pay to pay online in the UAE. And then there's Egypt. In Egypt, there's another alternative payment method called Fawri, which I'll talk about all of them in detail. I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of questions on a lot of them if you've never heard of them before. And I'll make sure that by the end of this presentation, we can all leave as experts on payments in the region. So moving on, just to show you the kind of the full picture, ensure that you have all your customers to pay with everything that they want to pay with, all the options that they would prefer to use online, ensuring that they can pay with everything. These are all the payment methods in the MENA region. So as I promised, going into detail about each one. just experiencing the payment, not just the payment experience, but also the value and the importance of offering the local payment methods in the region. So starting with Saudi Arabia and Meda. So as you can see on the screen, there are 43.5 million cards issued in Saudi Arabia, and 39 of that number is 39 million are branded for Meda, and around 4.5 million cards are going to be credit cards, which are going to be branded for Visa, Mastercard. So this can give you an idea, saying that if you don't support Meda in Saudi Arabia, you're going to be missing out on a lot of customers in that country. But not only that, if I give you a stat about the number of cards, or let's say the number of transactions for all the networks in Saudi Arabia, 95% of all transactions made by cards were actually from Meda. So moving on to another example in Kuwait for KNet, you can see it's very similar, the behavior, with 4.9 million cards issued in total. 4.1 is KNet cards, and 800,000 is going to be for credit card, Visa, Mastercard. And just to show you another thing, saying, okay, you know what? A lot of these cards, they're important, but how's the experience like? And that's another thing that you need to be very aware of, because if I'm living in Kuwait and I'm used to paying with my KNet card, my KNet debit card, then when I check out, the experience is also different. It's not just adding, the digits and the CVV and the expiry date of your card, but it even goes further. And I'll show you a quick live example. So when you're checking out, first of all, you need to select the bank that you're working with. So if your bank was issued, by Al Ahli Bank and Rajhi, any of the Kuwaiti banks, you need to select which bank it was first. And then you can see there's a drop-down menu right next to the card number. And there's going to be a list of, let's say, 6 digits that your card is going to start with, depending on the bank that you choose. And then you add the rest of the card details, add the expiry date, as you would do with any international card checkout. And then you would also go and add a PIN, which is the same PIN that you would usually use to withdraw funds from an ATM, or when you pay physically with a card, sometimes you need to add the PIN, and you need to add it for an online checkout, which, at least in my experience in the UAE and international markets, is not something that you do. And then you confirm your card details and everything in order, and you're done. So I also want to show you a little bit more about Fawri, as I explained to you before. So Fawri is an alternative payment method in Egypt, and this is not a debit network. It's not an international network. What it is basically a cash reference system. Okay, and the way it works is, because in Egypt the population majority, which is around 30% of the population over the age of 15, have a bank account. So that leaves a lot of individuals living in Egypt, who want to purchase orders online, who want to buy online, are unable to do so because of, let's say, a lack of card acceptance, right? Because they don't have cards to pay with. So what they do is, they would first, when they're checking out, this is just a quick example of their experience, they would select Fawri as an option to pay. And as soon as they select Fawri, they would get this page. So they would get an order code, and then they would go to, you can see a link below this saying the store locator. So there's around 225,000 different locations in Egypt, where you can go down to the nearest supermarket, any location which supports Fawri, make the payment in cash, and give them the code. And as soon as you do that, they will confirm that the payment has been made, and the online transaction or online payment has been completed, and now you've officially bought online using cash through Fawri. So just to also show you some different stats with the card usages in every country, you can see that in the majority of the GCC countries, if not all of them, debit cards are dominating credit cards. You can see 95 versus 5 in Saudi, 94 versus 6 in Kuwait, and so on. And you can see in the UAE is probably the only market that operates as close as possible to the international markets, with the debit cards and credit cards, becoming much closer to each other. And it's just a good example to show you about the experience and for the MENA consumer in the market. So after all of this, understanding the MENA consumer behavior, whether they want to pay with cash or through card payments or alternative payment methods, The next thing that you need to think about is how can you enable a seamless payment experience for these customers. And as I explained, first, all the payment options which your customers love need to be provided. Second is ensuring that they can pay with any currency. There's because the world has become a lot smaller. A lot of people travel a lot, even if they're based in the UAE, they might want to pay with their Kuwaiti KNET card, and they want to pay in KD, and it just allows you to also target individuals on a massive scale if you offer them more options and to allow them to pay in the currency that they prefer. Second is streamlining the refund process, to make sure that it's not just easy for them to get refunded back their funds, but also for you as a merchant to offer quick and seamless refunds is going to be very key. Because again, from my personal experience, I'm sure a lot of people listening in would say the same. How many of you enjoy doing refunds in today's world? I'm sure no one would say yes. If you do, then we need to check you into a mental hospital, right? And the reason for that is because it's not a fun experience. It's a very tiresome. You worry if they've actually refunded the amount or not. You might have not received a message from the bank. It's a whole hassle. So ensuring that this process is seamless is key. Another thing, and this is to avoid refunds and chargebacks, is something called authorize. So basically, what this means is when any purchase happens, a transaction occurs, instead of charging the card, as in confirming that you have taken the amount out of their account and it's en route to your account, instead you can authorize the amount, which basically places a hold on the amount of the transaction in their account, but the amount hasn't left their account, right? So what this allows you to do is it allows you to confirm, for example, do I have inventory left on this order? Can I process this order in the location that they're asking for? Whatever the reason is, for you to, it just gives you time, before going back and saying to the customer, we can do it or we can't do it. And if you can't do it, instead of issuing a refund, all you would need to do is void the transaction, basically canceling it, and it's as if the money never left their account, right? So again, it cancels out the need for a refund, the charges that comes with it, and even chargebacks if it ever comes to that, and makes it a much more seamless experience. And then the fraud management, ensuring that your customers are protected. They make a payment online, their card details are not stolen and used somewhere else. And then finally, to streamline your operations for you and your partners. Now we hear a lot about marketplaces, growing, and basically what a marketplace does is you onboard suppliers, you onboard businesses just like any merchant would, and then you would do a KYC for them. KYC stands for Know Your Customers for those who are not sure. And then you need to accept payments to make sure that their products and their company products and services are being sold, and you're accepting payments from it. And then what happens after? There's either a percentage revenue share where you split the payments, so 90% goes to you, 90% goes to the customer or the partner, and then 10% goes to you as the marketplace owner. And then also doing reconciliations, is very important to make sure none of the financial operations are halted. And then paying out to make sure that all your partners receive their funds at the earliest times as well. So that's my presentation for today. Please let me know if you have any questions. Be more than happy to answer.
Thanks, Mohammed. That was a comprehensive overview. So you touched upon BNPL there. So the question is, how real is it? Is it a fad, or is it something which is drowning a section of the customer segment into more and more debts? Is it profitable to the payment organizations or for the banks?
It's a great question. It's a great question. From our point of view, first of all, as a payment company, it's another payment option, right? That's the first thing. So if individuals would prefer to pay later, it gives them the flexibility for it, and that's always key. Second, it's what's the customer going to lose, right? The customer is not going to pay interest. So if they're using a credit card and they want to pay later through the card, there's usually interest involved. There's usually heavy fees if you don't pay on time, and so on. However, with buy now pay later companies, it offers the flexibility, the freedom, and let's say the interest free transactions as well. And at the same time, it has become a platform. If you go to any buy now pay later website, you would see unlimited number of merchants who are offering not only an option for you to buy now and pay later, but also discounts if you're using that platform. So it generates a lot of, let's say, business for merchants, and that's why it's becoming very popular. If this wasn't a winning formula, then it would have failed from day one. But you could see that this is something that has been picking up massively. As I mentioned also in my presentation, just in 2022, it's expected to double, increase by 100% in usage and the customers. And you will never find a problem from any customer saying, "I don't want to pay with a buy now pay later." You have nothing to lose. It's that simple, you know.
Right. But I mean, if you look at the global trends, the stock values of leading players were going down, or else in India, for example, one of the leading players brought in post 30 days, they are charging interest. So the rules of the game are changing. The players are. I mean, I won't say this is an innovation. They're just changing the rules, right?
And
So yes, the
absolutely, no,
yep.
absolutely. Just on the stocks, I think all the stocks are going down today.
I know.
I don't think that if you focus on buy now pay later, I think it's very clear that it's here to stay. I think that it's growing. I don't think that at least in our experience working with thousands and thousands of merchants, they're looking for buy now pay later. Their customers want to pay with it. So I think I disagree. I think that yes, the rules are changing for any business, not just buy now pay later, but it's here to stay, and it's definitely going to keep growing, especially in this market.
Great, great. So, yep, thanks a lot for joining us here at API Days Dubai and sharing your
My
uh,
pleasure.
great overview on the payments market in MENA and also responding to this question. It's a question I believe some people may not want to answer itself, right?
No,
Yes,
100%. And thanks for having us. Really appreciate it.
yes, thank you. So, joining us next is Sudhindra Balaji, Senior Vice President and Tribe IT Lead at Danske Bank, one of the leading banking players in the Denmark market. He'll be talking to us about modernizing mission critical applications without stopping the bank. Hey, Sudhindra, welcome to APIscene.
Hey,
Bye.
Prashant. Thank you for having me. Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. Yeah, yes, your screen is up. So
Awesome.
stage is all yours. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for having me here. Happy to be a part of this event. A quick introduction to who I am, also to set the context here. I am the global head responsible for Danske Bank's core banking platform. Danske Bank is a large Scandinavian bank. We operate primarily in the Nordics and a few countries around that. And I, of course, am a technologist at heart. I have been with banking for about 20 plus years. I'm immensely passionate about generating business value through technology. And for a vast part of the last 3 to 4 years, I have been working heavily with how do we use APIs to modernize core banking platform and thereby also deliver business value through it. So here are a few experiences that I would like to share. Our starting point was to look at what are the triggers for us to consider modernization of our core banking platform. And I'm sure many of you will recognize these to be common pain points. One is we typically have an IT portfolio which has been built over decades, which means it is also subject to all the accumulated debts that come with evolutionary architecture, mergers of different systems at speed, etc. The next one is about increasing the cost of change due to such a portfolio state, which means progressively it would become more and more expensive for us to be able to maintain the portfolio. and also take us longer to deliver towards business. This also in turn increased our overall operational risk profile of the portfolio, both on the portfolio complexity itself and also people and technology. We progressively have had a lot of challenges in making sure that we can still attract and retain talent who are willing to work on legacy technologies. And then in the end, as far as material impact to business is concerned, it significantly restricts our ability to react to customer expectations and business expectations. So this was a little bit our starting point. And then we thought, okay, then what can we do about it? As I said, the why was about the business drivers and the technology and the people and competence that I just talked about. And the what and the how was revolving a little bit around what kind of risks were acceptable and beyond which we could simply not stay in the same state. There were several modernization approaches to consider. Of course, it starts anywhere between on the left-hand side as to recoding parts of the platform up until on the right-hand side to picking commercially available core banking solution and reintegrating. And then the what and the how also contained an operating constraint for us to make sure that no matter which approach we took, we were able to progressively and continuously show business value and not end up in an approach where we started on a modernization journey in year zero and then something of value was only visible after 4 to 5 years. So, so based on this, we defined and agreed on a done state where we were very conscious to state that coexistence of legacy portfolio and modern portfolio was or will be a reality. And then we were also very conscious in making sure that while we were modernizing our core banking portfolio through APIs and cloud, we stopped accruing more technical debt. So as much as it was important for us to deliver the APIs, which were the new ways of integration, it was important for us to stop additional integrations on the old interfaces. And then, as I mentioned, getting to a done state incrementally was key for us so as to not make the business and the customers wait for a long time before we could actually show some value. So our starting point in terms of our technical inventory looked a little bit like this. We had business applications primarily on mainframe. And the implementation choice and approach we took for this was that we primarily want to land up our portfolio on private or public cloud. When we started, it was private, and then now, of course, we are significantly investing in making sure that we are able to proceed on AWS. And then here, as I said, we prepared and designed for coexistence. Considering we are core banking and hold a lot of master data, our focus was to make sure that we maintain data integrity and also functional integrity due to the coexistence bit. The state of the portfolio also offered us a situation where it was a set of poorly managed separation of concerns, which basically meant that business rules, data handling rules, etc., was quite intermixed. So we used domain-driven design as a primary approach to slice and dice how we wanted to differentiate the monolithic core banking portfolio we have and take an outside-in view and figure out how to incrementally deliver modernization through APIs. And then, of course, on the last part, we had mainframe developers and business analysts who knew a lot about the existing system, as it is with typical legacy portfolios, but the knowledge was not sufficiently documented. So, so we took an approach here to infuse business and technical competence by making sure that we hired cloud-native application developers so we can infuse that commercial and standard experience into the teams. But we also very consciously invested in our own people who were SMEs in the portfolio and cross-skill them so progressively they could work with both mainframe and cloud technologies, so as to make sure that we bring people along and also not lose key knowledge. And then we also focus quite a bit on making sure that we have the discipline around product and portfolio management and not end up in a cloud application portfolio, which was also some kind of a strangely managed monolith. And then agile ways of delivery, in making sure that we incrementally deliver value was a key cornerstone of how we wanted to deliver. So we took a three-phased approach to get from the stage where we had the business application portfolio on mainframe and offered relevant APIs and streaming events based on that portfolio, and the portfolio and the data itself landed on cloud. I have a few high-level technical descriptions of how each of these phases looked, which I would like to share with you. Phase one was all about making sure that we introduced a distributed read. So typically in this and the next two slides, what you will see is on the left-hand side, we have the existing portfolio, which is on mainframe, both the database and the functional layer. And on the right-hand side, we have our design for cloud. And in between, we have, of course, domain model, which was derived as an output out of the domain-driven design exercise. So the first phase was about taking the data on mainframe, applying DDD as an approach to it, and looking at the subdomains and recreating a modern and a more flexible data model on the right-hand side, and thereby also use the data streams out of the mainframe to continuously populate the new data model on cloud. And all the RESTful APIs and the events that we issued on cloud would just talk to the data that was out of the new data model. So first phase was all about getting to a new data model and then allowing for read operations on the RESTful APIs and events. Second phase was about making sure that we could then take this setup and push it one step further, where we moved also update functionality and the functionality itself out of mainframe to cloud. And this was for the portfolios where we had chosen to modernize and write the applications ourselves as opposed to buying a third-party solution. We also had approaches where we bought SaaS solutions to modernize. So basically what this phase gave us the ability to do is for all newer integrations, we had APIs and events available both for read and updates, thereby giving us a solid chance to decouple all the legacy integrations that we had on mainframe. Completing phase two was very critical and a cornerstone of our strategy, because until we could do this, we would simply not be able to switch the master and shut down the master on the mainframe, because we still had a lot of consumers on it. And considering we were a core banking portfolio, that would pretty much be the entire bank. So phase two again was all about making sure that we had the right data models on the cloud, and then we had APIs and events which could service that part. And phase three was to completely decouple any legacy dependencies on our portfolio and make sure that all read and write operations simply happen on cloud. Of course, we have for a significant part of our portfolio completed phase one and phase two. We are right now implementing phase three for many of the subdomains that we have. So that's a little bit what stage we are in at this moment based on this approach. There are a couple of other things that I would like to share with you, which are learnings out of, practically how did we pull this off. The APIs that we developed on cloud, which were progressively able to look at read data and update of data, had to handle coexistence. So this is our view of representing what coexistence means technically. So anything below the red line is a set of data and mainframe and legacy services that had to remain functionally and data-wise consistent. So no matter where the trigger point was for consuming these services, it could have been through a RESTful API or the legacy interfaces that we had. The functionality and the data behaved the same way. So anything you see above the red line is all about the different interfaces that we historically supported, the ones that you can see in gray boxes about legacy file interfaces, messaging services, etc. And also through the RESTful APIs and the events that we had. So this design decoupling was essential to make sure that we continue to provide consistent and reliable data integrity and functional integrity when we were moving through phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. So this was one of the things that we implemented, and then coming back to the RESTful APIs and the events itself during the coexistence phase, it was very important for us to make sure that there were a certain set of standards that were implemented and followed on various aspects of how the APIs were designed and how they were used. Of course, it started with the fact that whatever we did with identifying APIs, that was anchored with domain-driven design as an approach, and the APIs followed the standard RESTful principles. And then we also had a developer portal where developers could consume the APIs through self-service. This was hugely important for us because this was our trigger point for making sure that we exposed the accumulated domain knowledge on the core banking portfolio through self-service. And then as far as the production and consumption of APIs were concerned, we had a lot of work put in to make sure that the API payloads had backward compatibility. The security mechanisms applied on API on cloud was consistent with the security mechanisms and authorizations that we applied on mainframe. And then we also made sure that some of the 12-factor cloud principles, especially about maintaining standard CI/CD pipelines, looking at the cloud portfolio from a DevOps point of view, was also put in. Consistent error handling was also important for us, again, due to coexistence, because it's one thing about the APIs being able to handle error, but then it had to have some correlations to how the portfolio still existed on the mainframe. Anything that we delivered on cloud by default came out with test automation. This was again our ticket to reduce the dependency on key person knowledge, thereby progressively having all regression tests automated. And then again, considering core banking supports all business processes in the bank, including the newer ones with open banking and PSD2, API and microservices observability, tech stack and tool stack, which we had on our cloud platform, was also key for us from day one. So this is a little bit the qualitative measures that we took to make sure that the APIs and the cloud portfolio that we delivered was reliable and was standard. So in the end, and this is my last slide, the summary of learnings look a little bit like this. Understanding drivers for modernization is key to expectation management to make sure that when we can deliver what and what does the modernization done state look like from an API and cloud perspective. APIs are definitely key in terms of introducing newer and standard ways of consumption of data and functionality, but it is also important to clean up the technical debt at the back end. Otherwise, we end up leaving our organizations with a dual portfolio with a much higher level of complexity than what we started with. While production of APIs in a standard way is very important and crucial, having a clear API adoption strategy with consumers, either internal or external, was also very key for us. Otherwise, it didn't help much if we just had a bunch of APIs which nobody wanted to consume or nobody had an incentive to consume. And then again, as I said in the second bullet point, having a clear decommissioning strategy for all the legacy integrations is important for us to actually shut down and gain the efficiency benefits on total cost of ownership for the portfolios that we deliver. And then making sure that we focus holistically on people's competence, not only from a tech perspective, but also business and functional knowledge perspective was key for us to make sure that we brought people along in this journey. And then, as I said, in the end, delivering business value through APIs progressively was key to make sure that the investments for modernization were sustainable, and it also materially affected what business and our customers wanted. So that in brief is something that I thought would be interesting to share here in this forum. So that actually concludes my part of the slides that I had prepared. I'd of course be more than happy to take any comments, questions, or inputs if there are any.
Hey, Sudhindra. Yes, there are some questions. So one of them is, has Danske Bank got into the embedded finance journey? I mean, have you entered some partnership? That's one. So just connecting to your talk then. So how easy is it for you now that you have done this transformation, this API journey? How easy is it for you to move to that? Take that embedded finance path?
Great. So, of course, as a bank, as far as business strategies are concerned, we are always on the lookout for what benefits and what makes sense towards our customers and shareholders. But as far as how easy is it now, relatively as compared to when we started the API journey, it's a lot more easier. And the ease comes with the fact that all the internal data and functionality are now consumable and understandable through standard API interfaces. So there is that much lesser lead time for people to be able to figure out what are the options available on how we can effectively use the data and functionality we have. The second part is with the API and the domain-driven design vocabulary, we are able to have far more fruitful conversations, either with our own internal business or the TPPs that we might want to talk with, because there is a lot clearer understanding of what our own data can do, what our own functionality can do, and thereby identify opportunities. So it has significantly become easier for us to have those conversations and enter into any of those partnerships right now.
Okay. So another area in the API life cycle, which is gaining prominence, which is often talked about, is the API security. We had a couple of sessions yesterday and one more lined up for later today. So how did you go about that API security thing?
Sure. It's always a tricky topic. There are several perspectives I would take as far as security is concerned. One is, how does the API behave in the internal ecosystem, and the APIs that are exposed to the external ecosystem, right? So those are two broad categories of APIs I would call out. The ones that are relevant for open banking and PSD2 follows a set of guidelines from the industry standards itself, both on application and data security and authorization and authentication, etc. So those are some of the things we definitely followed. As far as the internal ecosystem API security is concerned, as I pointed out, maintaining consistency of authorization and authentication between the cloud applications and coexisting legacy applications were important. So we use an internal common application framework for security involving also ADFS and the likes to make sure that the APIs are able to we are able to consistently authenticate and authorize them. Along with that comes our ability to host the APIs on standard API gateways, which gives us a lot of features in terms of interacting and integrating with our own security mechanisms that we have. And then there is a standard set of application logging frameworks that we use to make sure that we are able to keep an eye on it. In addition to this, of course, there are the infrastructure and network security principles and policies that are applied as and when we talk about API consumption, but they are applied centrally through the services that we provision internally. So that's a little bit how we walked around with API security.
Sure. A little comprehensive answer. Yeah. So the last question. What is your API monetization approach? What have you done? How have you been on?
Okay,
What is the experience?
This is something that I get quite a bit. I look at monetization again in two flavors, internal and external, because there is a lot of business investment and outcomes that we have promised internally in the bank as to why different application areas should consume APIs. So the monetization there is simply tracked in a few angles to make sure that progressively newer business applications that we launch is that much more simpler and that much more decoupled. So not every aspect of the bank and every department of the bank have to drag along. So we constantly track consumption internally, and we also constantly track how much did we save over the last few years so as to not make changes to proprietary interfaces. As far as external monetization is concerned, that comes through, of course, some of the business strategies that we have, not least spanning the partnerships that we interact with TPPs and the business large business customers that we have. Again, that would be a little bit out of scope for me to share here in terms of the external monetization, but our ability to track consumption and track exit out of legacy interfaces is our internal key for incentivizing API consumption.
Okay. So you have an internal no, a developer portal where the teams,
Absolutely.
internal teams can come. Okay, great.
At any point in time, we are able to see the volume of new integrations, the volume of events consumed, and also the progressive decline of how many transactions we have to process on mainframe. So all of that has been put in place to make sure that we keep an eye on the financial benefits that we have promised.
And the governance and process are in place to ensure that no duplication of APIs happens
Yes.
between
Yes.
the teams, right?
Yes, and most of that is, of course, as wherever it is automated or it can be automated, it has been automated. We also have internal APIs for quality checking the APIs that we deliver. So APIs over a period of time don't become a new set of problematic services that we have. So all the hygiene factors of how API should be maintained from a life cycle perspective, they are internally available and automated to a great degree.
Okay, great. Okay, thanks a lot.
Of course.
That was great talking to you and great no, listening to you.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you, Prashant, for having me here, and excited to follow the rest of this talk, and have a good session the rest of the day.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, so that brings to an end of this segment and stage one. We'll be taking a break, rather a lunch break. You can spend your time having your lunch, visiting our partner booths, and getting the clues or finding out the answers and participating in the treasure hunt. We'll join back at 12:10, so 1 p.m. Dubai time. um, and the segment at that point in stage one will be digital transformation in aviation.